Alrighty, guys. Well, here we are. It's December, and there have been a lot of movies this year. I've seen a lot of movies this year. Not gonna lie, I've enjoyed a lot of them. I've loved a few of them. I've disliked some of them, and now we arrive towards the end of the year, and there are only a few big movies left. Because of course there are the Oscar movies and some of the smaller movies that I'm gonna catch up on probably beginning of January that we head into Oscar season and look forward to, as we did last year, or I guess early this year, heading into Oscar season. So I'm looking forward to that, right? But a few big movies left. Zootopia 2, I still need to get to next week. Hopefully we'll do a quick review. And of course, Avatar, Fire and Ash. But let's talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Now you might be wondering, why is Access Blockbusters reviewing Five Nights at Freddy's 2? What's the big deal? Well, frankly, there is no big deal, other than this is a franchise that I was somewhat interested in, simply because I've been a fan of the games. I have been a fan of the games really since they first came out. And if you've been following the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, you might be saying, well, wait a second, I thought you hated horror. True, I hate horror movies, generally. I backtrack. I hate the experience of being scared, generally. And I hate seeing images that I just will not make me sleep at night. I don't like it. I really don't like it. But I'm also very consistently, I love good stories, right? No matter what form they take. And sometimes the good stories, like It, for example, is an example I go back to a lot. Stranger Things even is kind of scary in places, but there are some things that just, it makes it easier. It transcends those horror elements. I never played much of Five Nights at Freddy's. I played a little bit here and there, but the lore, the story behind the games, at least at the beginning, I still loosely follow the lore. It's getting crazy. It's been getting crazy for the last few years. I really have stopped following it that closely over the last 2, 3, 4 years. But, the first 4 games, the first few spin-offs, I was on board. It's super interesting. The universe is rich, and I think the horror kind of elements just add to the intrigue of the story, which is what I love. I love that. So I was really interested in the games. Now we're here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but just another quick thing, because I think, again, it's always super important. By the way, this is going to be a non-spoiler and spoiler review, if that wasn't clear by the title of this segment or this video. So we're going to talk about this movie in complete non-spoilers other than what you see in the trailers and things like that. So if you have not seen the movie, do not worry. We're going to delineate very clearly when the spoilers begin at the very end of the segment. But for now, it's going to be completely non-spoiler. Getting back to some of my thoughts, though. Not even on the movie, just giving a little bit more context. Because like I've always said, knowing where I come from as a reviewer or as a podcaster or pundit is helpful so that you know where my thoughts are coming from when I start talking about the second movie. So to say, anyways, I was excited about the first movie. I was. I think it did this weird thing. I don't know why. I don't remember why. It did this weird thing where it released on Peacock and theaters at the same time. So I don't know why. But anyways, I remember watching the first movie. I was excited for it. I didn't love it, And it was interesting because I'm not somebody, again, who likes to be scared. But to me, the animatronics just seemed kind of goofy, even though I really commend the production for using practical effects. I really do. I really, really do. I just thought the first movie was whatever. It was pretty unremarkable for me. So heading into the second movie, I was thinking, okay, well, the first movie actually made a pretty decent amount of money for what it was. Let's see what the second movie can be. Let's see how it can improve on the first movie. Although, I had heard right before I watched the second movie, some pretty bad reviews. I didn't know the extent to those bad reviews. I go online after watching the movie to find a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, albeit with only about 50 to 60-ish reviews, so take that for what you will. But that's not a good score. So I walked into Five Nights at Freddy's 2 with some hope, but also with some trepidation. And I came out of the movie. Here's what I think. Is it a great movie? I don't think I could say that for myself. However, I will say, and perhaps it's because my expectations were lowered or whatever the case might be, I didn't have a terrible time with this movie. There are some movies this year, and I haven't done a review of every single movie I've seen this year that's come out this year, just because I don't think people are interested, or some movies I got to later and things like that. For example, a movie like The Running Man. I really had a poor theater experience with that movie. Not because people were talking or anything like that. Just the experience of watching that movie just didn't click with me as I sat in that theater. I get why it would for some people, but just for me, no chance. And so that's an example of when the theater experience didn't work. This movie, I sat in the theater. Granted, there are some things in this movie that are quite laughable. As in, how do you write characters like that in 2025? How do characters do these things? XYZ characters make XYZ decisions in 2025? Shouldn't we have learned from 150 years of cinema writing at this point? How do we do that still? There are definitely characters, there are definitely scenes like that. There are some really random things also that happen in this movie that you kind of take a step back and you go, yeah, from a writing perspective, I don't understand. I just don't understand how that happens. But the overall theater experience that I had personally is one of not entertainment, I would say, but enjoyment to a certain extent. I thought the movie was fine. It was okay, I will say. And I think my theater going experience, more so than actually what I thought about the movie, was okay. It was fine. So honestly, I came into the movie thinking, okay, could have been worse. Here are some things that I enjoyed about the movie. I think the performances, in general, there are a couple egregious exceptions to this that I can't really talk about here. We'll talk about it in the spoilers, but not really bad. Some of them are really bad. But for the most part, right, you have your main cast. Josh Hutcherson plays Mike, and you have Abby again, you have Vanessa again. They're good. Most of them are good. Josh Hutcherson is a good actor, and I think he does a good enough job for what he's been given to do. I think, to the credit of the movie, that the new animatronics, right, and we're talking new, it's in the trailer, so hopefully not a spoiler, but the new animatronics that you see in the trailers are pretty well designed, and they look good. And I will even say, because one of my big problems, right, with the first movie is that those animatronics just didn't seem scary to me. Wow. They moved really clunky. They just didn't seem intimidating at all. Some of the things they do with these animatronics in this movie are actually pretty cool. And some things are genuinely kind of scary. And so I give the movie props for that. Because even though I don't love the experience of being jump scared, I get what the movie was going for. And I think some of the animatronics and things they did with them, pretty good, actually. Pretty good. I think that some of the things in the movie, story-wise, were pretty well set up. And I think the payoff at the end, I'm of two minds of the payoff at the end, but I think some of the things in there were pretty interesting. And yeah, I think that there's nothing spectacular about the story. There are actually a lot of tropes and cliches, but it is what it is, and it's not horribly executed, which I know is not heaping praise on this movie, but I mean it. I genuinely mean that I didn't have the worst experience. But there are, of course, things I didn't like about the movie. Yes, some of the writing and some of the characters are laughably bad. I don't understand how you can do that. How we can still write these kinds of things in 2025. I don't understand, but it is what it is. It happens. Here is really, though, the biggest interesting thing to me about this movie, because I think, and this kind of goes to some of the things that I think people would not like, although my experience with it might have been less bad. And I don't think this is an excuse for a movie, by the way. I'm not saying this to excuse the movie at all. I'm just pointing this out. I think if you played the games, if you know the lore, there are a lot of things in this movie, a surprising number of things in this movie, that I think were meant to satiate game fans and game fans alone. I don't think that's a good thing, to be quite honest with you. However, as a game fan, right, there are things in this movie that I was able to look at and go, oh yeah, I totally see what the thinking behind that was. Whereas I could also take a step back and just be try to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's never touched Five Nights at Freddy's before, has only seen the first movie, and is going into this movie. And I totally would understand if they went, that's the stupidest thing ever. How does that make sense? I totally get it. There are a surprising number of things, those kinds of things in this movie. That is what happens, I think, when you try to make a movie just for fans of the game. I'm not saying that they, didn't want to make a good movie, but I am saying the focus, I think clearly in certain places, and granted, in some of those places, I think pretty interesting fan service. We'll talk about it in spoilers, but I think there are many places where you go, oh yeah, no, I know what that is, I know what that is, I know what that is. But to an outside observer, I think some of those things might be incredibly frustrating. In fact, for me, as somebody who's just trying to follow the story, there was one thing in particular that we'll talk about later in spoilers that I was like, oh, no, I get what that is in the game lore, but it came out of nowhere in this movie. So, again, I think that this movie, and it's getting horrible reviews. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a third movie. They're definitely trying to set up for a third movie. I don't know if that's going to happen. I will say, I mean, not my least favorite theater experience this year. Not a movie that I'm particularly keen on rewatching either, though. But again, maybe I set the bar too low because I had a good time. A good enough time is what I will say with this movie. Let's dive into spoilers now, though, because there are a few things that I really do want to talk about in spoilers. But if you haven't seen the movie, no worries. Save the segment, save the podcast, save the episode for later, and come back once you have. Let's dive into some spoilers. So, like I was saying, right? Some of the things in this movie are just so obviously there for the fans. I mean, it's nice. Like, I'm not talking about seeing Baby, for example, the animatronic Baby. For those of you who have seen or who have played the games, you know Sister Location, right? That's where she's from. I'm not talking about that. That's just a cool little Easter egg kind of thing. I'm talking about the entire extended sequence where Mike Schmidt, because now there's two Mike, there's Mike Schmidt and Michael Afton, which, I don't know, I haven't been keeping up with the lore for a long time. I thought they were the same person at one point, or theorizing. Anyways, that's a whole other aside. But, because in this movie, clearly they're not the same person. Unless they are, but they're not. But basically, that entire extended sequence where Mike Schmidt is basically playing Five Nights at Freddy's 2, I thought was kind of cute, actually. Cute, obviously, there's animatronics trying to kill him. But, I cute in the way where I was like, oh, yeah, no, I get what's going on here. And they're trying to recreate it in a way that feels realistic. And in certain cases, in certain ways, it actually worked pretty well. But then there are just kind of things that happen where you get it, right? If you're a fan of the games. Like when he puts the Freddy mask on. Oh, of course, it's a game mechanic. But can you imagine, if you are a fan of the games, somebody who isn't a fan of the games watching the movie and seeing that for the first time and going, that's it? That's what stops the animatronics? Just putting on a fake mask? And if you are one of those, people who haven't played the games, I want to know, did you guys think that was dumb? Because when I saw it in the movie, your first reaction is, oh, I get it. And then my reaction is, oh, that's kind of dumb, though, if you're just watching the movie, right? It's different. It's hard to translate that from the game to the movie. Other big thing, Michael Afton. Michael Afton shows up for 3 minutes at the beginning. He says, they say his name is Michael, so everyone, who knows the game is like, oh, it's Michael Afton. Of course it's Michael Afton. Great, that's fine. He shows up for 3 minutes at the beginning to, I guess, kill all those kids. I don't know, whatever. Doesn't show up again for the entire movie. Shows up at the very end again, and he's like, it's me. And I'm like, oh, that is just ridiculous. The only reason I didn't have a more visceral reaction, again, is because I'm a fan of the games. And I know Michael Afton is a very key character in the game. So that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about, right? This movie does some ridiculous things. But I think I'd be very curious to know if the experience varies based on if you're a fan of the games or not. Because I suspect it really does. It really does. There are also other things, like I was talking about, where it's just laughable, in my opinion. Just on a movie level. The entire character of that science teacher is atrociously ridiculous. Ludicrous. I don't understand how you can write a character that laughably unrealistic, just at all. I don't know if they were going for laughs, because sometimes in this movie, it almost seems like they're trying to be funny, like it's supposed to be a comedy, but it's not. Like it's just, is it trying to be gory when you pop somebody's head, Is it trying to be funny when the science teacher is saying to Chica, I'll give you test answers? Is it trying to be a kid's movie? I have no idea. So there are those moments like that. But again, at the end of the day, I really didn't mind my time watching this movie. Is it the most memorable thing? Am I going to rewatch it? No, I'm not. But, I think for what it was, I didn't mind it. So, and that's probably not the bar you want to clear, but it is the bar that this movie cleared for me. So there's that. What did you guys think of Five Nights at Freddy's 2? I'm assuming if you are here, you have seen it. So what did you guys think of the movie? Did you enjoy it more than the first movie? Did you enjoy it less than the first movie? And are you looking forward to a potential third movie? Because also, guys, really quickly, post-credit scene, they're setting up a third movie with Springtrap. And that's, we'll see if that ever happens. But guys, let me know what you thought about the movie in the comments down below.